Okay, so I know it's been over a year since Red Dead Redemption 2 released, and I had decided not to bother making a review of it at all. But with the PC release of this game just days away as I write this, I figured a new audience might like to hear about an experience they thought they might not ever get to have before they lay down money for the game. I should say up front that although I will not give story spoilers for Red Dead Redemption 2, I will completely f*** up the ending of the first Red Dead Redemption for you in about 50 seconds from now. So if you have never played, or don't otherwise know what happens in the previous game, I suggest you go and find out before complaining in the comments that I ruined the end of a well-known game that released almost a decade ago.
Como Driscoll's gonna lose his mind about this.
In 2004, Rockstar released a third-person action-adventure western curiously titled Red Dead Revolver. As a western fan, I played it, and it left a sufficiently deep impression that I just had to Google what the story was about, and I have already forgotten what the entry said. In stark contrast to this underwhelming experience, 2010's Red Dead Redemption left me an emotional wreck, and so impressed by this example of video game storytelling that I refused to play it again because it would mean resurrecting a character I had found it hard to say goodbye to the first time, after Rockstar had made it quite clear that there is only one way to redeem yourself of the sorts of things Marston had been guilty of in his youth. John Marston was gone. I had buried him, and did not intend to blemish an otherwise sublime gaming experience by looking upon that scarred face ever again. So it was with utter joy that after 8 long years, I started up Red Dead Redemption 2 and began my journey into the world of previously unmentioned hard-ass cowboy Arthur Morgan, riding out with a gun on my hip, climbing beautifully rendered mountains in intense blizzards to find...
That's quite a scratch you got there.
Mother son of a... Yes. As any gamer with a pulse knew long before the game was released, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a prequel taking place 12 years before the initial events of Red Dead Redemption, with folks like Benjamin Byron Davis, Steve J. Palmer and Rob Wheatoff, among others, reprising their roles as Dutch Van der Linde, Bill Williamson and John Marston respectively. It was a fairly safe bet the voice performances at least were going to be spectacular. But Red Dead Redemption left some pretty big shoes to fill, and we wanted to know if the rest of this Wild West romp would live up to the Egyptian pyramid-sized monument of expectation that 8 years of waiting had built. Rockstar have made a habit of releasing genre-defining video games in the past, creating large, immersive worlds full of well-voiced, entertaining characters, random encounters, and truckloads of collectibles and achievements to augment your hours and hours of unrestrained chaos. But Rockstar are storytellers above all else, which is precisely what I look for in a game, but can be frustrating at times for those who just want to jump on in and shoot stuff. So if you're planning to play this game in the near future, be warned, Red Dead Redemption 2 can be a very slow burner, especially in the opening 2 to 3 hours.
It pains me to say it, but he's right.
The scene is set brilliantly, with 6 full minutes of cutscenes before they'll even let you touch the controls, and once you do, you'll have a long, slow crawl of a horse ride through thick and seemingly endless snow with our old friend Dutch, exchanging occasional brief bits of exposition about the foiled robbery they are fleeing from to break the monotony, or mask the sound of your horse's frozen testicles clanging together like Chinese worry balls as it plods like a depressed sea turtle through the raging blizzard.
It ain't like that.
What is it like?
I wanna live, cowpoke.
It does seem, for the first couple of hours, as though Rockstar are reluctant to let you off the leash, but the snow and the cold seem intentionally symbolic of the way the game plays out, and as you descend the mountains into warmer climes, the game too starts to thaw a little and you are gradually allowed more freedom. Intentional or not, this seems to extend throughout the entire course of the game, with the very last, and rather large, desert region from the previous Red Dead Redemption not opening up until the main story is essentially over. That's not to say that the game is over at that point. There's an entirely new life to it, almost literally once the main story is complete, but there's a lot of story to get through before you get there. So let's go back to those frozen horse testicles and talk about some of the criticism that Red Dead Redemption 2 has come in for, the first of which being, well, horse testicles, or more accurately, what they came to represent in the run-up to the game's release. Though Rockstar's stated intention to set new standards of realism with RDR2 had us all very excited to see exactly what that would mean, very few of us could ever have predicted that what it would mean was gamers and game journalists alike taking to their social media platforms to argue about horse genitals, and why the sight of the aforementioned unmentionables swinging and even shrinking in cold weather might well be the line that game realism was never really meant to cross.
Yes. Well, it's not everyone's cup of tea.
It's certainly true that the attention to detail in this game is remarkable, to the point that I think it will be looked back on as a benchmark for open-world games that follow. Tracks are made in snow and mud by animals, humans, and vehicles, and will slowly disappear when rained away or covered over. If your weapons get wet, they will corrode if not cleaned. Animal corpses will decay over time, your horse will get dirty, arrows will bounce off things they should bounce off, a character's ears will show blood red as the sun shines through them. If you shoot bullets through the bottom of a boat, it will, as you might imagine, sink. And NPC behaviour is not the simple cardboard cutout stuff of other games either. Neither your friends in camp nor bystanders in the streets will put up with you harassing people continually, and will eventually intervene if they think you're being an asshole.
You listening to me? Stop!
If you get arrested in free roam, you will normally have to sit out a passage of time cutscene before being released, but just occasionally your fellow gang members will show up out of the blue to break you out. And if you don't loot a body, your outlaw buddies will, so leave no corpse's pocket unpicked. NPCs you meet who are in need of help may just go on their way with nothing more than a thank you, but that doesn't always mean you've seen the last of them. They may yell out to you in the streets of Valentine and thank you for your earlier assistance by gifting you anything you want from the gunsmith or the general store, for example. Pretty much anything and anyone you see in this game you can interact with. You can flip objects over to better inspect them, and there are no doors just painted on for effect. Even if you can't go through them, Arthur will try the handle and eventually shoulder barge the door to try opening it. Hair growth, snow melt, persistent NPC damage, realistic thunderstorm audio, the list goes on, and it really does. I could list literally dozens of other tiny details that set this game apart from so many others. But with RDR2, as with many games I've played, and indeed life, I find there's a lot to be said for getting your priorities straight.
I guess I'm more interested in saving lives than winning at chess.
Why, for example, in a game so concerned with reality that NPCs will actually show up to remove bodies rather than letting them simply disappear over time? Am I not allowed to run within the confines of the gang's quote-unquote hideout? I assume they're not worried we'll run with scissors since we just mowed down half a town of lawmen over a handful of sheep. And why have Rockstar paid someone to program temperature-reactive equine genitalia, but is apparently beyond their capabilities to schedule some programming time which might allow my character to go prone if he feels like it? Here's an idea. Take the horse balls guy and partner them up with whoever was responsible for programming the bathing animation so that instead of simply selecting take a bath, I must scrub my head and every one of my limbs one by one. And maybe, with all that extra programming power, they can get their heads together and figure out a way that I can lie the down when hunting, or whenever the game warns me to stay out of sight while sniping. I mean, sure, staying low and stable whilst shooting to scare someone without crippling them for life is obviously not as important as making sure my horse takes a 12-pound crap every 27 steps, but surely it deserves a little attention.
We're selling dreams, dear boy!
Well, as long as...
Many of this game's issues are horse-related, in fact. Sure, they look gorgeous, will behave differently according to your interactions with them, and move more realistically and fluidly than arguably any other horsey companions to this point in video game history. But they have the collision avoidance skills of a zombie on a jet ski, and will crash with about half as much style when the guy riding towards you moves his horse 2 inches to the left. Fortunately, these crashes are extremely funny, since they will happen a lot more often than you'd think.
Shit!
And be careful when you get off your horse that you have the right weapons selected, because you can only keep so many on your person, and RDR2 seems to randomly mix them up from time to time just for giggles. So it's easier to leap off your horse hunting a grizzly and discover as it thunders towards you, intent on hindering your breeding privileges, that you're carrying the Wild West equivalent of a Nerf gun. This is even more of a problem when you do a story mission and the game just flat out chooses your weapons for you, putting you in the middle of a shootout with that lever action rifle that came free with 6 cans of refried beans. This game is by no means something you can simply jump in and out of. If you're going to complete the story, you're going to need to set aside some serious time and be prepared for a very slow start.
You think this is rest?
I know a few people who were looking forward to this game but gave up on it quite early on because it felt like Rockstar were holding you back too long, or making you work too hard to get to the good bits.
Oh, I'm sorry, madam. Was there insufficient feathers in your pillow?
And while I can see their point, they are missing out on one of the most breathtaking, immersive and emotional journeys I have ever experienced in a video game. Some have complained about how the game controls, but honestly I never really did quite understand the problem. The character control feels more fluid than most games I've played. I mean, if you're running full tilt down a street, it's gonna take you a few steps to come to a stop, and likewise your horse, but isn't that just what happens when you're moving at speed? You've spent your entire life learning how to adjust your own bodily actions for the harsh realities of physics. Is it really so hard to translate that into how you control a character in a video game? But game controls are a very personal thing, so maybe you have to decide that for yourself. I mean, picking things up out of boxes in cabinets really can be a pain. And although I never really had any major problems with the combat, I can see the places where people might do. And the law can come down a little harshly on honest mistakes, which happen more often than not as a result of subtle differences between several different actions, all mapped to the same buttons. And this might make it seem like you'll never get the hang of it, but again, this completely depends on how you play games. If you swap between different games quite often, I can perhaps understand how some of the interactions and controls can feel a little counterintuitive. But if you're the kind of person who sticks with one game for long periods at a time, this shouldn't cause you any difficulties at all. The chores around camp can definitely get a little tedious, and are made all the more so by the no running in the camp rule, but you don't have to do any of them if you choose not to. Players who don't spend a lot of time exploring camp might never even notice there are chores to be done, and most of the time, it's entirely your choice.
I ain't chopping vegetables for a living!
If you can forgive Red Dead Redemption 2 its little eccentricities, and honestly, I didn't really notice it had all that many, it will reward you in bucket loads. It is not just a pretty face. Having said that, before I continue, we do have to take a moment to appreciate just how pretty it really is. Even some of the game's harshest detractors have been quite happy to admit that the game is just a feast for the eyes. It's absolutely the most gorgeous game I have so far played, and I played this on an Xbox One X. In fact, this game is the reason I upgraded my Xbox to a One X, but it's still an Xbox. I can't begin to imagine how mind-blowing this game will look on a high-end gaming PC. But behind the drop-dead gorgeous looks, it also has a great personality. More importantly, hidden underneath the new and sometimes frustrating mechanics it has introduced, it has a Rockstar personality.
I don't even know what that means.
That means humour. It means flat-out weirdness in places. It means you will encounter characters who seem lifelike and quirky, some of whom will turn up again and again in expanding side quests that will make you laugh, leave you scratching your head, or sometimes break your heart. The game world is vast, yes, but it is so very full of things to do and see and trip over or get eaten by in a landscape that takes in everything from snowy mountains to deserts, from swampland to prairie, and even asides in some locations you would definitely not expect to encounter in a Red Dead game. The main story has highs and lows, moments where you can't catch a breath, and sometimes periods where it hardly seems to be moving at all. But Rockstar understand how to tell a story properly. They know that hardship and toil are sometimes necessary to really become absorbed in the lives of your characters and to understand and connect with them.
I don't speak German neither.
The voiceover and motion capture performances are easily the best I've ever seen in any video game so far, and Roger Clark well and truly earned his award for Best Performance as Arthur Morgan.
I don't know about that.
At this point, please resist the urge to go into the comments and write "The Last of Us" in capital letters, because I absolutely do believe you when you say it's a mind-blowing experience. It's just not an experience I have personally had because I haven't owned a PlayStation since 2008.
It's okay, kid.
Some of the characters in Red Dead Redemption 2 are a little bit cookie-cutter for sure. Some, and I'm looking at you, Micah, are about as well written as characters from Scooby-Doo and twice as predictable. And if you played the previous Red Dead Redemption, you'll know which ones you can depend on to make it through safely to the end. But it's a wild, wild world out there, and it's probably best to maintain a Game of Thrones type detachment to most of them, because it's a very big gang in a very dangerous business, and they might not all make it to the credits. I recommend you do, though, if you really truly love a good story. Stick with this game through those moments where it drags its feet a little and the payoff is well and truly worth it.
I just want him to finish the game!
Why can't we all just get along?
There are things like a goosebump-raising nod to the popular musical third act Segway ride from the first game when John Marston rides across the border into Mexico to the beautiful music of Jose Gonzalez. This time, of course, the ride is Arthur Morgan's, and with the addition of Red Dead Redemption 2's easily activated cinematic mode, you can crank up the headphones, sit back, and take a couple of minutes to reflect on all that has happened as the music of D'Angelo washes over you. Rockstar don't always know when to shut up and let the music do the talking, though, as evidenced by their attempt to repeat this later on, but with the misguided addition of echoey voiceover memories.
Oh, ain't that a little old-fashioned nowadays?
Apparently not.
You know which one I'm talking about, Rockstar. I just played through all these moments. I know what happened. You don't need to remind me.
I don't see you have any choice.
Rockstar have thrown a lot of obstacles into the early hours of Red Dead Redemption 2 that will certainly weed out the less patient gamer or those that like their game controls to conform to certain established norms. And that is perfectly understandable. This kind of game is not for everybody. Honestly, if you're used to fast-paced shooters and you thought this might be a nice change, don't do it. You'll only end up replacing your monitor when you try to insert your controller or keyboard in Dutch Vanderlin's smug face as he tells you it's all part of the plan for the 14th time since breakfast. And if you like to ride hell for leather in the straightest line to an objective, it's only a matter of time before gravity makes you its bitch. The game does have a fast travel system of sorts, but it takes time and work to unlock it. You could easily miss the fact that it exists at all, and it can only be used from camp in any case. But I think the fast travel system problem is a microcosm of Red Dead Redemption 2 as a whole. If you're all about the destination, about zapping from point A to point B to get things done with no time wasted in between, it's unlikely you will truly enjoy this game. And that's okay. because I don't think it was really designed for you. It was designed for the traveller, the kind of person who enjoys the journey more than the destination, who likes all the twists in the road and the characters you meet along the way.
Would you just look around you? This world has its consolations.
Red Dead Redemption 2 is a journey, not a theme park destination. But if you don't like long, winding roads, play something else. Or play Red Dead Redemption Online. Bring a friend and get all the fun of the West with 50% less travelling and 100% more microtransactions.
Sure. It sounds,
Thrilling? Yeah, it is.
I ain't got time for
No, wait!
Maybe I'll review that separately, we'll see. For now though, those have been my opinions of Red Dead Redemption 2, but if you want to make up your own mind, it's available on PS4, Xbox One, and if you're watching this after November 5th, 2019, it's also available on PC. You can follow me on Twitter at Knights_Arcade if you want to join in the conversation there. I will be playing a lot of the Outer Worlds in the coming weeks, I'm sure, but I will pop my head up long enough to say hi to my Twitter family from time to time. Leave a like if you liked this video, subscribe if you'd like to see more of my videos. If you feel I've missed something important, and I almost always do, leave a comment or make your own video about RDR2 and let me know on Twitter. But until next time, from Knights Arcade, this is Sleepless Night, saying nighty-night.